Julius Caesar is a two-player Columbia block wargame all about Rome's most significant civil war. In this game, players will take control of either Julius Caesar's or Pompey's legions as they fight over the control of Rome and surrounding locations. Now, this was the first Columbia block wargame that I ever played, so I can say with confidence it serves as a great introduction to the Columbia block system. I'll also say I think it serves as a great introduction to wargames in general, and the reason I feel this way is it offers those tough decisions, very tense battles, all the stuff that the great wargames are made of. The only thing missing in Julius Caesar is a set of overly complex rules. The rules are quite easy to digest for a wargame that offers such deep gameplay. There are lots of avenues to explore. Just every time I've played Julius Caesar, I've been left very much looking forward to my next play, so let's have a closer look at Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar lasts for a maximum of 5 years. After each year, there is going to be a winter phase, and one thing that happens during the winter phase is that players check to see if either player has met the victory condition, so the game may not last the entire 5 years. On average, I would say a casual game of Julius Caesar would take around 2 to 2.5 hours to complete. The victory condition players will be trying to meet is that one player must control a total of 10 victory points during a winter phase. Victory points can be awarded for having blocks placed in some cities, and these key cities have their victory point worth clearly printed on the map. Players may also get victory points for killing enemy leaders such as Julius Caesar and Pompey. Each of the 5 years in the game is divided into 5 turns, in which both players will play cards to determine turn order, how many groups they can activate, and also levies, which I'll discuss later. The number here simply indicates how many groups of blocks that player can activate. A group is defined as a group of the player's blocks together in a location. This particular game uses point-to-point movement, meaning players may move their blocks along the lines to locations linked to their last location. The lines themselves limit the amount of blocks that can cross over them each turn. Once a group is activated, players can move those blocks up to 2 locations away if they wish, but they may not want to, because to attack enemy units, you must move into a location the enemy currently occupies. Opposing forces can never exist in a location peacefully, it will always result in a battle. However, you cannot enter their location to initiate a battle if you have moved 2 locations to get there, only if you've moved 1. This often means you will know when an opponent is about to initiate a battle, as he'll move adjacent to you and then stop. Sometimes this may give you an opportunity to make them think twice about charging in, by bringing in reinforcements, moving out of harm's way, or using levies, which I'll talk about now. In Julius Caesar, after movement is completed with the play of a card, the active player can then use their levy points from the card. The levy points are used to bring on new blocks to certain locations, or perhaps increase the strength of injured or weaker blocks currently on the board. So levies are incorporated into the play of every single card, unlike some other Columbia block wargames where it's part of the wintering phase. And this really adds some tough choices. You may find yourself playing cards without much consideration for anything other than levies. Usually this will happen when a weaker force is facing extinction. Let's take a quick look at the blocks and how they work. All the brown blocks in the game belong to Caesar, all the green ones belong to Pompey. Blocks either represent a leader, a unit of various kinds, or navis. As I mentioned earlier, all blocks may move up to 2 locations, so there are no movement values printed on the blocks. A block's strength is indicated by the number up here, which determines how many dice that unit gets to roll in battle. Although as they take damage, they are rotated anti-clockwise, reducing the number of dice they roll, so as they take damage, they become less efficient in battle. When they run out of strength completely, they are removed from play. In most cases, they will be made available to you again in future turns. The combat rating here indicates what that block will need to roll on a d6 to damage their opponent's block in battle. Julius Caesar is an A3, meaning he will hit on any rolls of a 1, 2, or 3. The letter indicates his initiative, A being the best, as he'll strike before all B blocks, all C blocks, and all D blocks. Throughout the game there is a fog of war. You can see what units you have, and where they are obviously, but your opponent won't have the luxury of having the same amount of information about your blocks, as your blocks only have a sticker on the side facing you. This creates a lot of tension during the game, as when some battles are initiated, you will not always be sure of what you're up against. And just because someone has a lot of blocks in a location won't always mean that that location is well guarded, but it is certainly going to be an intimidating factor. This game also has quite a bit of naval activity. Players can actually have control of sea areas by using their navis blocks. Having control of seas, as I learned the hard way, can be a very powerful and useful tool. When a player has control of a sea, they can cross the sea using movement points from a card, meaning they can quickly move land units halfway across the map in a single turn if they wish. What you have to understand about this is that if your opponent controls a sea area, the adjacent port locations, which are the locations adjacent to the sea, are particularly vulnerable and can be breached easily unless defended. Now, sea control will go back and forth between players as naval battles occur. All I'll say is that it plays a big part in the game. If your opponent controls a sea area, be very careful. After the play of 5 cards, the year ends and the winter phase occurs, which, as I previously mentioned, will have players check to see if a victory has happened. Navis blocks must also return to a friendly port in the sea area that they occupy, so the seas will be freed up at the beginning of every year. Players also check to see if each location is overstacked. In most cases, no more than 3 blocks can occupy a location during winter, with the exception of the key cities, the ones worth the victory points. They will be able to accommodate more blocks than others. Now, there is more to the game. For example, when a leader dies, a new one is likely to be available to come on. Brutus, Antonius, Scipio, and even young Octavian are other leader blocks in the game. Cleopatra also plays a part in the game. She'll fight on the side of whoever controls Alexandria. There are event cards too, which give the player who plays them a benefit of some sort and a link to one of the Roman gods. If you'd like more information on how the game is played, the rulebook has been made available as a download on the publisher's website, and I highly recommend downloading it because it's quite easy to follow. Now, I've only touched briefly on the gameplay of Julius Caesar. What I want to take the time to do now is to show you just one situation that may occur in the game and some of the choices players will be presented with. Alright, let's have a look. At this point, I as Pompey control Rome, and Rome is worth 2 victory points. I occupy it with 4 blocks, one of which is actually Pompey himself. I have been hit with an event that has weakened this group of blocks, so my opponent has essentially just softened them up, no doubt before he makes a move on Rome. I have enemy blocks both one space north and south of Rome, so an attack is likely to happen very soon. My guess is that my opponent will move in to attack with the northern blocks, then add the blocks south of Rome as reserves. The result will be 4 of my blocks against 6 of Caesar's, something I am confident I cannot handle with this weakened force. What should I do? Should I make a tactical retreat, give Rome away and avoid conflict with Caesar's forces? I could then attempt to retake it in a later turn after I gather some strength using levies. The problem with that is, whilst I'm gathering strength outside of Rome, my opponent could be gathering strength inside of Rome. So should I wait, hoping that controlling Rome isn't part of his plans for the following turn? Well, given the event he activated that weakened my group there, I doubt very much it isn't part of his plans. I would at this point love to reinforce Rome with more blocks, and usually that would be an option available to me. But unfortunately, most of my troops are occupied in Utica, and I currently do not have control of the appropriate seas to transport them quickly enough into Italy. In fact, the reason my troops are occupied in Utica is because I didn't have control of those seas. Tough choices, but I've made my decision. I will leave Rome, head north, and attack the army there. Why would you leave Rome unattended, James? That's madness! Well, the way I see it, then at least it's 4 of my blocks facing 3 of Caesar's. The odds should favour me slightly more. I also hope that this lures his southern units into Rome. When I thrash the blocks north of Rome, I can turn back around and take them out too. Better to face 3 blocks at a time as opposed to 6 all at once. Well, it sounds good in theory. Something similar to this happened to me in a game recently, and I did make the decision to attack Caesar's units up north. Little did I know that Caesar's 10th Legion were there, which is a very powerful unit. Pompey was killed right there in battle, and Rome was handed over on a silver platter to Caesar's control. Now what you must realise is the scale of this game. Whilst all this is happening in Rome, other locations may face equally dangerous threats. Now, if in that example I had chosen any other option, things would have likely ended a bit differently, and any decision you make in one location may affect your options elsewhere. Like then, because of choices I had made previously in Utica, I had limited my options to save Rome when it mattered most.
Now that was just a sample of the choices available to me to deal with that particular situation. Of course there were many other options I could have chosen, probably much better ones too. But my point of showing you that example was just to show you that situations similar and in many cases much more painful and agonising than that are not uncommon. It's a regular part of the game to have to deal with enemy threats and be swarmed with options as a result. That example also shows you how that fog of war element can be very deceiving. You can walk head on into a freight train if you're not cautious. Also, when a battle does occur, all the blocks are revealed, so you're obviously going to know what you're going to be up against. And it's not a straight-out dice fest. You're not just going to roll dice and that's going to decide the battle. You'll have the option of retreating if it's feeling too much. There may be choices of who in your group to assign damage to, which may be very hard at times. If you do win a battle, you can also regroup to adjacent locations. So battles are very engaging. There are lots of choices to make throughout them. One thing I've noticed is that it can be very easy to become overconfident in this game, and I really like that about it. I feel like I need a rubber band on my wrist to remind me not to repeat my mistakes, because let's say you have a big group that's previously won a big battle, sort of proven their capabilities. That power can go to your head. It certainly does with me sometimes. Once I've felt the power of winning a big battle, I want to experience it again, and it's hard to resist the temptation to march them on and on just fighting battles, because eventually, no matter how powerful that group seems, they will be weakened and they will meet their match. So you don't want to be overconfident because you don't want to lose units that are on the board. But there's a balancing act. You have to have some confidence. You know, in general, you can't just sit there and play defense. You will need a plan in place to make a move on those enemy-occupied key cities, or the game will end very quickly with you being defeated. It's a great game. I absolutely love the system. Very exciting battles, that element of surprise along with all the fantastic strategic and tactical options is just excellent. When I first played the game, I'd rated it a 7.5 out of 10, and that's a solid thumbs up. But after my fourth play, it was sitting at 10 out of 10, and it just keeps getting better and better. No game I've ever played of this has felt the same. You may fight several times over Rome in every single game you play, but unless both yours and your opponent's blocks are the same as the last game that were placed there, and unless all the dice rolls are the same, it just feels different. It's a great game. Absolutely love it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again soon.